Motorcycling is an inexpensive hobby. Psych, that's a lie. Unfortunately, it's gonna cost you a bit of coin to become a motorcyclist and to be able to stick with it, but it doesn't need to be a massive financial pitfall. So let's talk about 7 ways to be financially savvy with motorcycles. Let's get into it. Right off the bat, if you're looking to save a little money with riding motorcycles, the first best way to go about this is to buy a used bike instead of a new one. Particularly in our current environment with tariffs, who the hell knows what a new bike is gonna cost in even a month or two. But especially as a beginner, there's no shortage of low mileage beginner bikes that are just a year or two old, can be had for a couple $1,000s less than MSRP of a brand new one. If you buy a brand new bike, you have the sticker price, the freight, the dealer setup, title taxes, registration, all that fun stuff. That's a couple $1,000 onto the out the door price. Plus, if you choose to finance it, the interest paid will add even more to the total cost of the life of the loan. Then you're met with immediate depreciation and the bike rolls off the lot, goes from a new to a pre-owned bike. And look, the depreciation on a $10,000 motorcycle is nowhere near as catastrophic as the depreciation on a $70,000 pickup truck. And I'm not saying there's never a good reason to buy a brand new motorcycle. It's awesome to have a brand new bike. But save that for when you have some experience under your belt and it's a smart financial move. For when you've been riding long enough to know this is something you're gonna really want to stick with for more than a single riding season. For when you know what type of riding you're really excited by and you can trust that you're not gonna want to move on from a specific bike sooner rather than later. If you can buy a used beginner bike for $4 or $5 grand in practically like new condition, there really is not any reason to buy that same bike brand new for $7 grand out the door after all the fees. You'll end up riding it for a year or two and then selling it for $4 or $5 grand anyway. But on the other side of the same coin, don't buy a super old, crusty, clapped out motorcycle thinking you're gonna save money because it just spells 2 words, money pit. The amount of money and time you'll spend getting a super clapped used bike roadworthy will ultimately cost you the same or more had you just bought a sensible used beginner bike in the first place. Also, it may cost you your sanity. Some of these bikes are basket cases. Another way you can set yourself up for success when riding motorcycles is to plan for the cost of ownership of the bike. Don't sign your name on that title until you've already got an insurance quote. You see a ton of young sport bike riders who are paying $200 or $300 a month for insurance, essentially doubling their monthly payment on a financed bike. That is pretty nuts when you think about it. Also remember that if you have a bank note on your motorcycle, they require you to have a certain level of insurance, which may end up costing you a ton of money too. Now look, the cost of insurance varies a lot depending on the bike, your age, where you live, and a lot of other factors like home ownership and marriage status. It's pretty crazy. So definitely shop around for quotes before setting your heart on a certain bike. But as a rule of thumb, fully fared bikes are typically going to cost quite a bit more to insure than a comparable naked bike. They're more often crashed, more often stolen, and have more fragile plastics that need replacing should the bike be damaged. Besides insurance, it's worth noting the service intervals of different motorcycles before buying as well. You have basic things like oil changes, coolant, and brake fluid flushes, and other consumable parts, but there's also big ticket service items like valve adjustments. If you plan on having your service done by a shop, costly service can add up quick. If you're planning on buying a used bike, take into consideration what it will cost to make sure it is up to par. When buying a used bike, it's always advisable to swap your fluids after purchase just for peace of mind, but other things may come up. Maybe the bike sat for a while and will need a new battery, or it's due for new tires. So if you're looking at a used bike, do some research on what it's going to cost to properly care for it. Buying a used Japanese bike is almost always a safe bet. Parts are readily available and pretty inexpensive. They'll typically use standard tire sizes that are made by many different companies and come in any style you could ask for. Whereas if you're buying an older bike or some sort of oddball Euro bike, parts might be more expensive and harder to find. So definitely do your research and know what other costs will be attributed to your bike after that initial purchase. DIY is a major life hack. Painting your house yourself, making your own meals, and of course, in the context of today's video, maintaining your own motorcycle are all very easy ways to save some cash. Even something as simple as an oil change can cost upwards of $200 when done by the service department at a dealership. There's the cost of materials and the cost of labor, and for some reason, all of these manufacturer-certified techs seem to take a full hour to drop a drain plug and unscrew an oil filter. Motorcycles are really pretty easy to work on. They're small and they're lightweight. They only require a simple rear stand to do a vast majority of routine maintenance. You don't need a big garage and a floor jack like you do if you're crawling around on the ground trying to do work on a car. I've seen guys accomplish way more than you'd think with the motorcycle maintenance with half of a one-car garage. It's pretty amazing. You can find a PDF file of your service manual for practically any motorcycle for free online thanks to all the forum chads. You can get a pretty well-equipped mechanic's toolkit at Hardbrick Freight for like $200. Get a solid rear stand for $200 or less if you can find one for sale on Facebook Marketplace, an oil change kit with oil and filter for like $40. After a little investment in some tools and a rear stand, you'll be saving money after the second time you change your own oil compared to having it done at the dealer. Even slightly more involved tasks like changing brake pads or fluids or swapping sprockets and chains can be done by basically anybody who has patience and can follow directions. Maintaining your own bike won't just save you money, it will help gain you confidence in yourself and a little bit more self-reliance. Since we're talking about working on bikes, another easy way to save money on your motorcycle is not to excessively modify it. This, for some reason, is a huge hot take in the motorcycle scene, but it's true. Spending thousands on mods and farkles for your bike isn't really necessary, and yet you see a lot of people be like, hey, look at my new R7, I already have a tail tidy, a full exhaust system, a power commander, spools, frame slider, Rizoma mirrors, aftermarket turn signals, tank grips, and shorty levers on order. And it's like, well, why? You know? I buy and use a lot of stock motorcycles here at Yami Noob, and honestly, stock bikes are great. They're fine. Crash protection for your bike, that's a great buy. Certainly worth spending a couple $100 to protect your motorcycle. Some new tires, always good. But stuff like a full exhaust, a tune, or a crazy expensive mirrors have pretty quick diminishing returns. What's the point of spending a couple $1,000s to gain 6 horsepower and make your heavily modified R7 look like every other heavily modified R7? For the most part, motorcycles are really great from the factory. Most could benefit from a better set of tires, maybe a tail tidy, but that's all you really need to have a great riding bike that looks good and doesn't require thousands of dollars in modifications. Of course, you're entitled to modify your motorcycle to your heart's content, but if you're concerned about keeping your costs down, don't feel like you absolutely need to extensively modify your bike, because that's what everyone else does, and you can sleep well at night knowing that your credit card bill is low. It is the sad truth that in a majority of cases, the ways in which you've modified your bike will never add any value to it, and you'll never be able to recoup those additional costs once you sell it. When it comes to being financially savvy with bikes, considering the resale value can go a long way. When it comes to mods and resale value, at the very best, they won't add any value, and in the worst case scenario, it will decrease the value, because a potential buyer will see all the mods that fit your taste, and then they think about what it's going to take to return it to stock or to modify it to fit their taste. How many times have we all seen a cursed cafe racer come up for sale for like $5,000 on Facebook Marketplace, and you think, no one in their right mind will ever pay that? I wouldn't, and I'm sure you wouldn't either. Hopefully the seller had a lot of fun with the project, because there's no way they're going to receive a return or recoup what they spent on it. On a similar note, if you're hoping to recoup a good deal of cash when it comes time to sell your bike, bear in mind before you even purchase it in the first place. If you're looking for a bike that will hold its value, pursue something that's relatively modern and in the popular zeitgeist. You know, if you have the choice to buy an older Yamaha FZ6 or a newer MT-07, sure, the MT-07 might cost a bit more, but it's definitely going to be easier to sell when the time comes. Hondas are always going to hold their value due to their reputation for incredible reliability. They instill a lot of confidence in prospective buyers. Really, any modern Japanese bike should hold its value quite well when properly cared for. Euro bikes are a little more nuanced. You know, no one's going to want to pay top dollar for the Ducati you're selling if it's due for the Desmo valve service, whereas BMW GSs hold their value really well. KTM's 390s don't always have the massive resale value strictly because they're always easy to find brand new with really competitive dealer pricing. And larger KTMs are decently expensive but known to have their quirks, so the customer base on the resale market will definitely be smaller than other brands. So if you're really set on buying a bike you can ultimately sell for a decent price, definitely do your research first. And when it comes time to sell your bike, private seller is always the optimal way to see the highest return. Things get a little tricky when you still have a lien on it, especially if you don't have the cash lying around to pay off the loan and get a clear title. Trying to sell a bike with a loan to a private seller adds a lot of extra steps that can deter most potential buyers. That's why you see people often trade in the bikes they have active loans on to the dealership and roll that existing balance into the purchase of a new bike. Sure, that might be the easiest way to go about it, but that's not the smartest way. I did a whole video a month or so back on how to financially ruin yourself with motorcycles, and one of the biggest pitfalls for motorcyclists is continually trading in their bikes and carrying over a balance into a new loan. Even when you're able to afford the monthly payment, it adds up costing so much more over the length of the loan, because you're not just paying for the price of the bike plus interest, you're always catching up and paying for the negative equity in one or two other bikes you traded in prior. Motorcycles are toys for most people in America. You don't want to be in the tens of thousands of dollars of debt for a toy, no matter how much attention you get from other dudes. It's just not a smart way to live. And lastly, you do not need to succumb to the will of the clout machine when purchasing gear. This stuff adds up fast nowadays, boys. There's tons of high-quality safety-rated gear that's sold for affordable prices. You do not need an AGV Pista Carbon for your CF Moto. You don't need to wear a $1,000 climb jacket on your 390 Adventure. There's always really high-quality gear available on closeout that you can get for nearly half off. Certain helmet colors get discontinued and put on sale. Sometimes the ECE rating standards are updated, so an ECE 22.05 helmet will be half the price of a 22.06. And any ECE rating is going to be better than the minimum DOT. But at the same time, don't buy the absolute bottom dollar garbage gear either, because they always say, buy cheap, buy twice. And if you do end up buying really garbage gear, ideally it just wears out and falls apart. Worst case, it gets destroyed when it fails to protect you in a crash, and then you have to buy new gear and pay for hospital bills. So find the sweet spot when shopping for gear. There are plenty of brands that sell safety-rated pieces at accessible price points. The ultra high-end, borderline designer gear brands are not going to be twice as safe as something that costs half the price. When they're all meeting the same safety standards, you're either paying for the brand or added comfort or convenience features. And while it might be nice to have 24 pockets on your Climb ADV jacket, buying a cheaper jacket and just using a backpack can help you save some money. You made it to the end! Great job. Are you cost conscious when it comes to riding? Do you feel like you're gonna have to be going into the future because of what's going on with the economy? I sure do. Or do you just send it on the credit card, tell yourself it's a problem for future you to worry about, and just live for the now? If you enjoy what we do here at YamiNoob, head over to yaminoob.co to check out our membership program. It's the #1 reason we're able to give you independent daily motorcycle content. Not only will you be supporting the channel, but you'll also get automatic giveaway bike entries as well as some other cool perks. It's one of the best parts of what I do here, and I truly do appreciate the support of the thousands of members we have. So go and check it out. Thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you later. Fact. Despite losing more battles than he won, George Washington's strategy of survival and guerrilla-style tactics ultimately led to victory in the American Revolution. Goodbye.
I'm like a bird, I wanna fly away. I don't know where my soul is. I don't know where my home is. Da 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 da. I'm like a bird, I wanna fly away. I don't know where my soul is. Oh, hey. You're still here. Man, this is awkward. You should, you should keep watching YamiNoob.